Hello, everyone. We're back, and I'm with a young man that I met probably about a year and a half ago, and
Yeah.
online. And I was really impressed with him and the work that he does.
Mm.
So we're on this broadcast. We're doing the future of youth. We're not going to get into, the who's who of where this one's from, that one's from. We're going to get into the future of youth as Amit sees it. Amit, can you just? We want to, share a little bit more about each other. I'd like to find out. You're based in the UK.
Yeah, based in the UK, based in London.
Okay, and your family hails from where?
Uh, Ethnicity-wise, my parents are from India, in Punjab.
Oh, Punjabi.
Yeah,
Okay, are you? So, Does that mean that you're Sikh?
yeah. Sikh, practicing Sikh, yeah.
Yes. I want people to understand that culture because it's really important to share culture.
Yeah,
Okay,
100%.
but not define a person by their culture, but to share culture. You can share food. You can
Mm.
share. I always say geographical spaces and places to share culture.
Yeah, no,
you
yeah.
know. And Pakistani food is very good, especially Punjabi food, because I have
Mm.
friends from that are Sikh, and their mothers cook for me, and I love it. Okay,
Yeah,
but we're
yeah.
not going to get into food because I'll get hungry, and I have not eaten. So,
Yeah, no, that's good. Mm.
so Amit, we're talking about the future of youth.
Yeah.
Okay, 30 under 30. Looking at where we are now, in fact, all generations together, we would love your opinion on because of one day you're going to be older than 30. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And you're going to have a set of youth that are looking at you like, okay, this guy thinks he's, we know,
Yeah.
So let's start with what's important to you. Let's say you had a declaration, just like I said to Shea before.
Mm.
You have a declaration sitting in front of you, and the person says, whatever you say that you want on this declaration or this blueprint, it's going to look like that. Okay? For the
Mm-hmm.
future of youth. You know about the
Yeah.
sustainable development goals, you know
Yeah.
about whatever. But we're gonna talk about the goals, but not talk about them. We want to use it in everyday language. One of the things I say, I mean, is that when people wake up today, especially during COVID, it doesn't matter what level, you could be making upwards of a million to a couple million a year. But with COVID, people are losing their jobs.
Yeah. No, they are.
So when people wake up, the first thing they're wondering is financially, how am I going to take care of myself or my family or my children?
Mm-hmm.
I want to continue to eat accustomedly to good food and not canned food or anything like that.
Yeah.
Their health and well-being. And I personally know that there's a connection between climate and underserved areas and all of these things that we're talking about. But we can
Mm.
go into that later. You start off wherever you want of what's important to you that you would want on that blueprint declaration document.
Yeah, damn. I mean, I guess one place to start is I think collectively we have an issue with placing youth or youth of interest in positions of power. Um, like it's more a concern of responsibility in the sense that like providing young people real positions of power early provides our future collectively a better situation in the long run. For example, we will grow up, as you were saying before, to become government, become people that people look up to, or the young look up to, etc., etc. So I think today, maybe if I was to write a declaration or something on those lines, I would probably want to push the idea of government today providing a better forward investment into fueling youth action. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we used to have like a lot of stuff to do with reduce, reuse, recycle, and that was like a good way of enforcing responsibility onto young people. But today, you don't really see much of that. Like, it's more, it's very odd because, like, I mean, you see a lot of young people motivated, but their motivation lacks a sense of direction, and so they simply call for change rather than making change. And it's not like it's a problem with our youth overall. It's a problem with not only society, but just as an individual, as a human. Every day we wake up and we decide, okay, I'm not too sure what I want to do today, so I'm going to evaluate my decisions based on what's best for me long term and what's best for me short term. So it's not a problem just to do with our youth. It's a problem to do with our bodies on a genetic level. But having the fuel and the sense of direction given to us early, like a scheme like Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, is what can therefore provide great experience for youth who will end up becoming, our next. great leaders and etc. So yeah, if I was to write a declaration, I'd probably stress the idea of enforcing great responsibility onto young people and providing them with real situations of power. So yeah.
I have to ask you about this because what I would often find is it's not about providing you with the power, it's about you owning your power. That's
Mm,
what I feel. I mean, because no one can give you what you already think you don't have.
yeah.
you know so I think it would be great to have youth also share their gifts, okay?
Mm,
Because sometimes it's always the youth looking for the older to give them something, and then at the same time, if you want them to give it to you, then where are we hearing from what's important to you? Do you
mm.
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
you know
Um,
so coming from that place, like, you have owned your power, Amit. I see the work you do. Okay.
mm,
You've taken your power into
mhm.
your hands. You've taken what you do and you're moving with it. You're not waiting for anybody to give it to you. You
Yeah,
carved it out for yourself.
yeah,
So, how would you direct other youth to do the same? See, you already have what's necessary to lead. You're doing it. You didn't
yeah.
ask anybody, you didn't wait. It
No,
was
no.
in you to do it. So, how would you direct other youths for the future to do the same? The one, the two, the three, the 10-year-old coming up behind you.
Hmm. No, yeah, no, that's a good point. If I was to try and, I guess, help people find a sense of direction in that way, I think it'd probably be like people should find, or the youth, or young people overall, individually should find a burden that they want to carry and take care of in the future. And it doesn't even have to be anything to do with environment or climate change. It just has to be a burden. And the general saying is like make the world a better place as you leave. But just I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess it starts at the home. Like a lot of things just start at home. And if parents are the ones to like help provide like a independent source of guidance within their children, and again enforce the idea of carrying a burden, then I think that can just end up snowballing into something much, much greater. Um, but yeah, if I was to try and help someone who was like misguided in that sense, who was trying to look out for themselves and wanted to find like a sense of responsibility, I'd probably tell them to look in their own home and start, in their own room. Find things that they haven't got in order with themselves. you know you then move on to like, oh, maybe I need to start fixing my friendship groups and start help becoming friends with people that benefit me, and then slowly work their way up. So yeah.
Amit, do you know how powerful what you just said was?
Yeah, I
No.
guess yeah.
Yeah, do you realize how powerful what you just said was? I hope everyone heard that, not about youth or young or older. I hope everyone just heard what Amit said. You just said start in your home
Yeah.
and look at what a problem is you view. Do you know I can take that myself
Hmm.
and work with that? I mean,
Yeah,
that's very powerful.
yeah, I guess it's a universal thing.
Yeah, but most people they don't say it. I mean, they don't do it. See, all the young people I've had on today,
Yeah.
you actually walk the walk. You don't talk
Hmm.
it. You actually walk it.
Yeah.
You don't look for someone else to give it to you, and that's what I want other young people to see. Don't wait,
No, no, yeah.
but at the same time, you have to learn too. We all have to learn, no matter what stage and age you are.
Hmm.
And I think the issue for adults that I can speak to is, as a kid, I promised I would never stop growing and learning.
Hmm.
I had to understand too, Amit, that when you get to a certain stage and age, it's not that you're stuck in your ways. You've gathered a certain amount of learning and wisdom. So
Hmm.
you understand something at a very core and soul point. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
one of the things I had loved about looking at what you were doing is you look at things from a soul point of view. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we go on to the next subjects that are important to you, okay?
Hmm.
And you were writing this declaration down, and I want you to write it from the soul level. Not, it doesn't have to be an intellect level, because I've
Yeah.
often seen your work is from the soul level. what do you want to go into subject matter here that you feel needs to be in a declaration, not even a declaration, because a declaration and blueprint is one where it can be shifted and changed as time goes necessary, but
Yeah.
it's also one is that people can learn from. It's almost like a guide map. One size doesn't fit all, but it does support. So take it away and share with us your thoughts on that.
In terms of like what I
What you
want.
want to see in a declaration in all areas of life, whether it's climate, whether it's water and sanitation, education, hunger, poverty, health and well-being, gender, anything that you see.
Yeah. I think when it comes to like very large scale um, institutions and situations like this, I think it can be very daunting for anyone, let alone young people. And I think a key thing for young people to know, just talking out of the topic and just overall in general, is that there's no, especially young people that want to go into like any form of charity work or any form of like charitable organizations, etc. There's no ideal end goal, or there's no ideal lifestyle, or there's no ideal nothing. Like with this type of work and doing stuff where you want to make a world a better place, it's more about just starting, literally just starting at the basics, working your way up, and then you there's no like there's no real defined moment where you've like done what you've needed to do, and you simply just pass it on. So although like a large scale declaration would be a great idea, and help from other organizations, government, etc., etc., I think it's much more powerful to have many people with their own ideologies and their own beliefs and their own pushes and stresses and whatever, to then do their work in the shadows, and then to then collectively over time, if everyone, as by definition, if we are 100% of society, if everyone takes the action that therefore like makes their life more difficult, we could resolve 100% of all problems. I mean, that's an ideal future. It's not like it's entirely possible, but yeah, I think, as I said before, you got to work your way down from when you're just sitting in your room all the way to the top.
I agree with you, and that's a way that I love to work. I mean, I love to work in the background. Okay,
Hmm.
I really don't like the foreground.
Yeah.
There's times where you have to come to the foreground. But let's get down to this. Just to let you know, this document is not about a big organization.
Hmm.
This organization is about individual empowerment, and
Yeah.
and that then becomes a collective empowerment. One size does not fit all. So I want to know what you want on that declaration with regard to climate. I want to know what you want on that declaration to regard to anything that's important to you. This is
Yeah.
not about anyone else but Amit.
Yeah. Hold on, my brother's calling me. Let me just. Yeah. So, as you were saying, like you wanted my opinion.
Not just your opinion. I literally want what you want to see in this future for
Mhm.
youth. Okay, so the youth have some kind of knowledge going forward that they have their own mind, but they can also learn from something, from the thoughts of others, because we're all inspired by others inside the things that we create,
Yeah. Um.
especially around climate. That's important to you. Let's talk
Yeah.
about those things. Share what's important to you that you want to see within a blueprint structure. That someone else young who may want to go into the environment or whatever can say, wow, all right, that's what he's sharing. I may not do it that way, but at least gives me some ideas.
Yeah. Um. I think if you wanted to get into climate, there's so much to do on the community level, and that's what's really important. Working within your community first. Um. And I know things like Greenpeace. They have a green wire system where like you can lobby with people in your area to your local MP, or as the US will call it, their local mayors and etc., to influence them on any forms of like environmental climate bills. Um, and working locally is going to have a much greater impact than if, let's say, you decide to enter an international competition on writing this essay about this and this and that. So for someone that's really like interested and wanting to get started, I say take your time. First, look at whatever's going around locally. It's not hard to find. Use Instagram, use Snapchat, talk to your friends, talk to your teachers. And then once you have that baseline and once you have that small network, it will slowly start to grow by itself. Yeah, that's what you're.
What are your thoughts about poverty,
Mm,
access to organic fruits and vegetables for everyone,
yeah.
and health and well-being and education? What would you like to see on a declaration for youth to go forward?
I think one big thing we should collectively tackle is factory farming. The numbers are insane, and they're just at this point practically breeding grounds for new viruses and new pandemics, as you like swine flu and stuff, and obviously like coronavirus now. I mean, it's arguable it came from there's no like defined area where it came from, but the general consensus is it came from a wet market, etc. But just overall, I think the idea of factory farming should be very much just utterly obliterated. But that's not a very rational thing for me to say, given the fact how many people like survive just basically off factory farmed food, just because of how cheap it is and etc. And I I also don't think it's like efficient for everyone to therefore to move to soya or to move to hunted food or whatever, because there's great environmental impacts with soya farming and soya bean production, and it's not also like environmentally possible for everyone to hunt or ethically hunt for their own food either. I think when it comes to food and resources, it should be a grow at home mentality. Have your own allotment, grow your own fruit and vegetables is probably the best way to do it, in my opinion. Like you will see where your food's coming from. Like I have no issue with what people want to eat as long as they see and know where their food's coming from. And yeah, I think we should start breaking down these these large scale means of production when it comes to food, and just make your own food from time to time, grow it at home and etc. Although it's much easier said than done. It does take a lot of time, but once from what I've seen, is once you get the ball rolling at growing your own food and etc., it's very much a breeze from there. So yeah.
Do you have any feelings about anything else of the kinds of things that you want? I want to know in general. I want you to just start and just share for yourself. What are some of the things that's important to you that you haven't said? Because admit, I know you're a very powerful young man, and I know it's hard to share things on a global spectrum like this, but
Yeah.
you have some very powerful thoughts, and we've talked briefly here and there, and sometimes on WhatsApp, and then I read what you have. What are some of the things that are really important to you?
Um, I think contextually speaking, what's very important to me the most right now is the student voice in the coronavirus situation. It's like there's very little consultation on the student behalf when it comes to things like lockdown and etc. Because both in the short term and the long term, students and young people are paying for this. In the short term, we get a lack of social experiences, and we the biggest concern is a lack of work and a lack of jobs. Or the bigger concern for students is the idea of not being able to go to university but still having to pay the ridiculous tuition fees. And in the long term, we also have to pay the tax on the borrowing the government are doing now, especially in the UK, for all these furlough schemes and etc. etc. It's going to be, someone needs to pay it back. But there's been zero consultation from the government to the students' behalf on what to do. Even though in the short term, the long term, you know, it's just coming at our cost. I mean, it's like specifically situations like that, which is where I want to see young people and young people of interest in power. But reasonably speaking, that's not entirely possible. And so you see counteractive measures by young people, like mass protests and etc. etc. But yeah, that's probably a big area of concern. A very like minimal lack of contact between the government and students these days. Yeah, very
What,
upsetting.
what about education? And then we'll go to my last question. Education of youth going to college and left with the burden of having to pay college and find work and things of that nature. What are your thoughts about that? And what would you like to see in a blueprint document with that?
Yeah, I think one thing is education is not a business and it therefore should not be treated as a business. The prices, especially in America, the prices of education have gone up tenfold, especially even if we're talking in a modern context, post 1990, they've gone up ridiculous amount, yet the quality of education hasn't. I understand you can't really, it has maybe like incrementally, but it's not proportional to how much it costs today. Sorry about the fireworks. It's Diwali night here, so everyone's doing their fireworks. But I think collectively, education should be treated as education. It should not be treated as a business mentality or with business schemes in mind. It should only be treated as how can we educate the people attending our courses the best, the fastest, the most efficient. And on the side of that, we should provide them opportunities of where to find work, how to find work, and what to do if they're in XYZ situations. But yeah, I think there should be like there definitely should be like an abandonment of business mentality in the education sector overall. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really like what you said. To provide all students with the same quality of education across the board. And no, I really think students shouldn't have to pay for it. But Ahmed, I have a question I'd like to ask you.
Mhm.
What about adults who haven't had the education that you as a student and other students will be going into? Because at that time they didn't need it. Do you think
Yeah.
education should be available to all ages if they need it?
Yes. Obviously, I would say the youth are more important when it comes to education, simply by the fact that it's a forward investment. It's just how it is. It's not like that's just me factually speaking. Like, but overall, holistically, yeah, education should be open to all. I wouldn't persist on the idea of it being free to all, given the fact that like I understand it's not cheap. For people who can't afford it, I think it should be, it shouldn't be a barrier to entry for people who can't afford education. But for those who can afford education, who typically would be older, I think they should have the equal opportunity to receive education, but they should also they shouldn't have, like it's difficult to explain because for them, especially older people, I mean, generally speaking, they have more money, so it's not like exactly unreasonable to suggest the idea that they provide more, financially speaking, to the university than young people.
I
It's
mean,
like putting everyone on the same barrier to entry.
I'd like to share something with you, and you tell
Mhm.
me your perspective.
Yeah.
Older people are usually putting the people who are 22, 18 to 22 through college. Older people, when they're at a job, are more susceptible to be fired because of their age, because they want to bring in younger people. If older people are fired from even $1 million, $10 million a year job, they cannot put their children through college.
Hmm.
Some older people, a lot of older people today, almost 30% to 40% of the older people are not prepared for the new technical revolution that's happening today. So I definitely want to have you come back on and have this conversation because
Yeah, no.
I think it would be a powerful conversation because we have to
Hmm.
go to the next person. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I will be. Yeah, for sure. Just let me know when I'm
And I want to go more into the climate work you do. So I might ask you, we have a block open today or another day, have you come back because this is a very powerful conversation that just got opened up.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
And I also want to talk with you about the indigenous community with regard to climate. So thank you so much. And
No,
hold on one second because I'm going to put you in the green room. Everyone, thank you for listening in.
thank you. Thank you.